HCI Lesson 15, 10 Usability Heuristics for User Interface Design by Nielsen. Introduction: Jacob Nielsen's 10 General Principles for Interaction Design. They are called heuristics because they are broad rules of thumb and not specific usability guidelines. So here are the 10 general principles or heuristics by Nielsen. So number 1, visibility of system status. The design should always keep users informed about what is going on through appropriate feedback within a reasonable amount of time. So when users know the current system status, they learn the outcome of their prior interactions and determine next steps. Predictable interactions create trust in the product as well as the brand. So here are some tips. Number 1 is communicate clearly to users what the system's state is. No action with consequences to users should be taken without informing them. Present feedback to the users as quickly as possible. So ideally, it should be immediately. Build trust through open and continuous communication. Now here's a real-world example of using this heuristic. So let's say, for example, in billboard or in malls. So say you are here. So you are here. Indicators on mall maps have to show people where they currently are to help them understand where to go next. So that's an example of visibility of system status. Number 2, match between system and the real world. The design should speak the user's language. Use words, phrases, and concepts familiar to the user rather than internal jargon. Follow real-world conventions, making information appear in a natural and logical order. The way you should design depends very much on your specific users. Terms, concepts, icons, and images that seem perfectly clear to you and your colleagues may be unfamiliar or confusing to your users. When the designs, controls follow real-world conventions and correspond to desired outcomes, called natural mapping, it's easier for users to learn and remember how the interface works. This helps to build an experience that feels intuitive. Tips: ensure users can understand meaning without having to go look up a word's definition. Never assume your understanding of words or concepts will match those of your users. User research will help you uncover your users' familiar terminology, as well as their mental models around important concepts. So here's an example of matching the system and the real world. So when stop controls, so these are stop controls, match the layout of heating elements. That's why this is for this and this control is for that. This one's for this and for this. So it matches the layout. So users can quickly understand which control maps to which heating element. So rather than having this maybe in a straight line, this one is better because it matches the layout of the heating element. So that's an example of applying this rule. Number 3, user controls and freedom. Users often perform actions by mistake. They need a clearly marked emergency exit to leave the unwanted action without having to go through an extended process. When it's easy for people to back out of a process or undo an action, It fosters a sense of freedom and confidence. Exits allow users to remain in control of the system and avoid getting stuck and feeling frustrated. Tips: support undo and redo. So that will, of course, make it easy for us to undo our mistakes and maybe redo if it is okay. Show a clear way to exit the current interaction, like a cancel button. And make sure the exit is clearly labeled and discoverable. So here's an example. So again, digital spaces needs quick emergency exit just like physical spaces do. So for us, it would be nice to know if you know that there are emergency exits in a building. So in case of emergency, you know where to go out. And the same is true with software or design. So there should be a way for users to get out of whatever they are in. So like cancel buttons, or maybe you committed a mistake, you can undo your errors. So this is about user control and freedom. The number 4, consistency and standards. Users should not have to wonder whether different words, situations, or actions mean the same thing. You have to follow platform and industry conventions. Jacob's law states that people spend most of their time using digital products other than yours. So they might be using other products than what you are using. So users' experiences with those other products set their expectations. Failing to maintain consistency may increase the user's cognitive load by forcing them to learn something new. So don't think that what you are using is also what they are using. So again, you have to follow standards and to be consistent so that you will not be increasing the cognitive load of users. So here are some tips. Improve learnability by maintaining both types of consistency, which are the internal and external consistency. Maintaining consistency within a single product or a family of products is internal consistency. So if you have a product or you have a group of products, then there should be something consistent with these products. Or the external one, so follow established standard industry conventions. So these are external consistency. So what is the industry doing? So whatever the industry is doing, you have to follow these conventions, especially if this is the acceptable convention. So example of usability heuristics number 4. Check-in counters are usually located at the front of hotels. This consistency meets customers' expectations. So if you are a customer, you would expect that the check-in counters will be at the front of the hotels because that's the standard. So if you're going to if you have a hotel, then you should always place your check-in counter at the front of hotels. So that's following the standards. Number 5. Excuse me. Number 5 is about error prevention. Good error messages are important, but the best designs carefully prevent problems from occurring in the first place. So not just showing error messages, but we should prevent the occurrence of errors. Either eliminate error-prone conditions or check for them and present users with the confirmation options before they commit to the actions. There are 2 types of errors: slips and mistakes. Slips are unconscious errors caused by inattention. So mistakes are conscious errors based on a mismatch between the user's mental model and the design. So these are the difference. Slip, again, you're unconscious about it. But in mistake, you're conscious about it, but unfortunately what you know is not does not match the design. So tips: prioritize your effort. Prevent high cost errors first, then little frustrations. So if you're creating for example, if you're creating a data entry program, so your program should validate the entries of users first before you will be able to save. Avoid slips by providing helpful constraints and good defaults. Prevent mistakes by removing memory burdens, supporting undo, and warning your users. So here's an example, a real-world example. So guardrails, so these are the orange one, on a curvy mountain road prevent drivers from falling off cliffs. You have to prevent them from doing the error that is falling off cliffs. And what is used here are the guard rails. Number 6, recognition rather than recall. So minimize the user's memory load by making elements, action, and options visible. The user should not have to remember information from one part of the interface to another. Information required to use the design, example field labels or menu items, should be visible to or easily retrievable when needed. Humans have limited short-term memories. Interfaces that promote recognition reduce the amount of cognitive effort required from the users. Tips: let people recognize information in the interface rather than having to remember or recall it or memorize it. Offer help in context instead of giving users a long tutorial to memorize. Reduce the information that users have to remember. So here's an example. So it's easier for most people to recognize the capitals of the countries instead of having to remember them. So how's that? Here's an example. People are more likely to correctly answer the question, is Lisbon the capital of Portugal? Rather than this question, what's the capital of Portugal? Because if you say what's the capital of Portugal, you have to force the people to recall. But here, they are just here to recognize, is this the capital or not? So it should be recognition rather than recall. Number 7, flexibility and efficiency of use. Shortcuts hidden from novice users may speed up the interaction for the expert user such that the design can cater to both inexperienced and experienced users. Allow users to tailor frequent actions. Flexible process can be carried out in different ways so that people can pick whichever method works for them. Tips: provide accelerators like keyboard shortcuts and touch gestures. Provide personalization by tailoring content and functionality for individual users. So something that you can customize or tailor. A little customization. Allow for customizations. Users can make selections about how they want the product to work. So here's an example. So this is the regular road, for example. This is the regular road. So regular roads are listed on maps, but locals, so those who know the place with more knowledge of the area, can take shortcuts. So maybe instead of doing this, they will be taking this road. So that means that for experts or those who are already experts of the software, for example, placing shortcuts should be convenient to them, and that means that's flexibility and efficiency. Number 8, aesthetic and minimalist design. Interfaces should not contain information which is irrelevant or rarely needed. Every extra unit of information in an interface competes with the relevant units of information and diminishes their relative visibility. This heuristic doesn't mean you have to use a flat design. It's about making sure you are keeping the content and visual design focused on the essentials. Ensure that the visual element of the interface support the user's primary goals. Tips: keep the content and visual design of UI focused on the essentials. Don't let unnecessary element distract users from the information they really need. Prioritize the content and features to support primary goals. So here's an example. The ornate teapot, this is the ornate teapot, may have excessive decorative elements that can interfere with usability, like for example, an uncomfortable handle or hard to wash nozzles. So the nozzle may be hard to wash. It looks very good rather than this one, but you notice that the nozzle could be hard to wash and maybe the handle is uncomfortable. Number 9, help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. Error messages should be expressed in plain language. There should be no error codes. So precisely indicate the problem and constructively suggest a solution. These error messages should also be presented with visual treatment that will help users notice and recognize them. So tip: use traditional error message visuals like bold red text. And then tell users what went wrong in a language they will understand, and you have to avoid technical jargon. And then offer users a solution, like a shortcut that can solve the error immediately. So maybe here's a real world example. It says here wrong way. So wrong way sign of the road reminds drivers that they are heading the wrong direction and asks them to stop. And maybe even better if they can place here something, maybe where is the correct way. So this is already a good example of the usability heuristic number 9. Number 10, help in documentation. It's best if the system doesn't need any additional explanation. However, it may be necessary to provide documentation to help users understand how to complete their task. Help and documentation content should be easy to search and focus on the user's task. Keep it concise and list concrete steps that need to be carried out. So here are some tips. Ensure that the help documentation is easy to search. Whenever possible, present the documentation in context right at the moment that the user requires it. So list concrete steps to be carried out. So here's an example. So information kiosks at airports are easily recognizable and solve customers' problem in context and immediately. So just imagine if you don't have something like this in airports or maybe even schools. So there should be something like this that are ready to help maybe students. So just a note to end this video presentation. Nielsen originally developed the heuristics for heuristic evaluation in collaboration with Rolf Molik in 1990. So that's Molik and Nielsen, 1990. And 4 years later, Nielsen refined the heuristics based on a factor analysis of 249 usability problems. It's the Nielsen 1994A, to derive a set of heuristics with maximum explanatory power, resulting in this revised set of heuristics. The 10 heuristics themselves have remained relevant and unchanged since 1994. When something has remained true for 26 years or more than 26 years, it will likely apply to future generations of user interfaces as well. So that ends my video presentation. Thank you very much for viewing this video.